Today we talk about a game in the French series Au fil de l'épée, By the Edge of the Sword. The game is called Épées et Croisades, Swords and Crusade, and it features the battles of Ascalon and Dorylaeum. With this review, I sort of like come to full circle with a series of reviews of mine. A couple of months ago, I played and reviewed The Lion and the Sword, another game in this same series. A viewer asked me, how would you compare the system with GMT's Men of Iron? So I tried GMT's Men of Iron, then I tried Infidel, another game in that system, and since after Infidel I felt that I wanted to play more battles from the Crusades age, then I also picked up this one, and I came back to where I started from, which is the By the Edge of the Sword series. After playing games in both systems, I can tell you that the systems have similarities, but they also have definitely each of them has its own individual personality. In this review I will not cover the basic rules and ideas of the system of By the Edge of the Sword. I already did that in my other review, the one for The Lion and the Sword. You can watch that one if you want to refresh your memory or if you want to learn about the system. So in this review I will just concentrate on the battles that you find in this module, Dorylaeum and Ascalon. Here you can see the map and the setup for the Battle of Dorylaeum. The setup instructions for the Christian army, which is here, are pretty strict. They tell you pretty much who goes where, but the Muslim player has much more freedom because Muslim player is instructed only about the area within which the units must go, but then within the area the Muslim player can position and organize his units any way he wants. The situation, as you may remember from history or from my review of Infidel, is that the Christians just got caught in an ambush. There is this large number of mounted archers of the enemy just ready to bring destruction upon them, and so they will have to defend their position. They put together a camp just to have a little bit of a defense, and they have to survive until reinforcements arrive. Now there are reinforcements on their way in turn 4, but not many in turn 4, mainly in turn 5 and 6, so it is gonna be a while before the reinforcements really enter the map and enter the fight and gain a position where they can really make a difference. So the Christian units here will really have to use terrain to their advantage if they want to have a chance to survive until the reinforcements arrive. And on this map, the terrain is much more detailed than the terrain you find in the map for the same battle in Infidel. I like that. I like the fact that different designers will emphasize different factors that to them were more important than others, and they offer different interpretations of the same battle. As for terrain, you have this change in elevation here, woods, a stream here, marsh, a camp is under those units. More changes in elevations. These changes in elevation are really terrible for the cavalry. So retreating here may be a good idea, may really slow down the cavalry of the enemy. You have Dorylaeum here, more woods. So there are ways in which the Christian player may spread units around and reposition them in such a way that terrain becomes a defensive factor to his advantage. Also, some of his units are objectively better than individual units of the enemy, so that is another advantage. Terrain and individual quality of the units really are going to be at the core of the Christian strategy. A rule that will add historical flavor and will make things a little less terrifying for the Christian player is that the Muslim player has to place this marker here on one of his 4 leaders each turn, and next turn that marker must be placed on another leader in the group. Now that marker indicates that all units belonging to that command for that turn are replenishing their quivers, and that means that they can move normally but they cannot attack in any way, which gives a little bit of a break to the Christian player because there will always be a leader that will not be attacking that turn. If at the end of the game the Muslim player has not placed that mark at least twice on each of his leaders, then the Christian player scores a substantial number of victory points, so the Muslim player will want to comply with that requirement, trust me. Playing games about the Crusades always makes me feel thirsty, so I think it is only normal to expect that the Crusaders involved in the fight would be thirsty too. To help with that, there are 2 units of Frank women, and that one is there. Do not get any strange idea, they're just there to bring water. The Christian player will have to keep at least 1 group of women adjacent to this river, otherwise he suffers penalties. But the trick is that having those women there is problematic too, because those women will need to be escorted by military units that may be desperately needed somewhere else on the map. At the same time, that means that those military units themselves will be dangerously close to this river, which is impassable terrain. So if the enemies arrive and manage to surround and corner the military units and start pushing them against the river, well, that is bad, because if a military unit is forced to retreat through an impassable exide and cannot comply with the retreat requirement, then that unit suffers extra damage. This is the map and the setup for the Battle of Ascalon, where the situation is the contrary of what you found in Dorylaeum. Now it is the Crusader army that has the initiative advantage. They managed to take their enemies by surprise, and they managed to launch a surprise attack. Here you have the Fatimid army. This is the Fatimid camp where the cavalry is and some infantry too. And the cavalry has been taken completely by surprise. They are not ready to counterattack, to defend, but there is a list to help them, a first line of archers and other infantry units that are there to put together a first defense against the advancing Crusaders. Terrain here is somewhat less problematic than what you find in Dorylaeum. Sure, you have these 2 main changes in elevation here and then here too, and changing elevation is problematic especially for cavalry. Here you have some dunes. I don't know if you can see them very well. Dunes will not influence movement but will give a penalty to charging cavalry. Vineyards that again will give penalties especially to cavalry. So clearly that will limit the effectiveness of the Fatimid army because they are the ones that have the majority of cavalry. At the same time, these factors, well, they may not completely cripple the army. The Fatimid player may be able to work around them. For example, once the cavalry manages to get on top of this elevation here, then they have some space to run here or here. This is all clear terrain. So I think it is a factor, but not a completely crucial one, not one that will determine the outcome of the battle per se. And to simulate the fact that the Fatimid cavalry was completely taken by surprise, here there's a special rule that prevents the Fatimid cavalry from moving during turn 1. To talk about the overall flow of the battle, the rule that prevents the Fatimid cavalry from moving during turn 1 clearly is a factor in the way in which the battle develops. However, if you think about all the rules that simulate the same effect of surprise in this battle, in the game Infidel, then you realize that the cavalry here has much more power, is much more effective overall than the Fatimid cavalry in Infidel. Because in Infidel it really takes forever before these cavalry units are ready to join the fight. By the time they are ready, very often the initial line of defense will have been decimated, if not exterminated, by the Crusader army, and at that point the cavalry that joins the fight may not even be able to make a difference anymore. Whereas here, their limitation is only restricted to turn 1, during which, in any case, the Crusaders will just be advancing, will just have the time to get in the range of the Fatimid archers, and not much more. During turn 1, they're not really able to put together a powerful attack. And of course, then, once the Fatimid cavalry activates, it still takes them a while before they spread. Probably they will spread and try to encircle the Crusaders. It will still take them a while, maybe a turn or so, before they can get anywhere where they can make really some difference, where they can act, but it still doesn't take them as long. It doesn't take them forever like it does in that game. So I had the impression that here, in this battle, the Fatimid army has a much better chance to put up a fight against the Crusaders than that same side has in Infidel. Special rules: the Fatimid player has a standard that must be attached to a cavalry unit at the beginning of the game. The unit that carries the standard cannot move south voluntarily during the game, and the Christian player will try to catch the standard, because if he manages to steal it from the Fatimid player, then he will score victory points for doing so. Another special rule says that Fatimid routing units may halt routing movement as they enter a woods hex. However, there's also another rule that will allow Crusader units adjacent to woods to set those woods on fire. They have to roll a die to see if they manage to set a wood hex on fire. And then during each turn the fire will spread, and you will add a fire marker to all wood hexes which are adjacent to the one or ones that are burning already, and the fire will destroy all units that are in the burning axis. So that can be kind of mean, but you have to admit that can be kind of cool too. And the Crusaders may act all holier than thou, but trust me, they will not say no to some good old pillaging when opportunity presents itself. If a unit in Godfrey's army enters an hex of the Fatimid camp, then that unit must roll a die, because there's a chance that the unit will become fatigued just from all the work that the unit does, pillaging things here and there. If the unit is really fatigued, the unit rolls a die and may become discouraged. I guess that means that the unit may get disappointed if it doesn't find enough stuff. Other people were already there. We wanted to pillage more, boo-hoo! I enjoyed the by the edge of the sword system when I played the Lion and the Sword, and I enjoyed the system here. Generally speaking, I think that the system has a good balance between historical flavor and chrome and playability. You have a lot of little details here and there that will make the game feel not generic. Here, for example, you have the Frank women, woods that can be set on fire, cavalry that is delayed, pillaging, things like that. But at the same time, all of these things, while they enrich the feel of the game, do not get in the way of game flow. You don't really feel that you are following a script, you are constricted by these things. They're fun to work around, it's fun to create your strategy around those restrictions, but again, they don't feel like terrible limitations that will kill your fun. The game has historical scenarios, variant scenarios to add to the replayability or to alter the balance of the game, depending on, you know, your strength and those of your opponents, or what you want to get out of the game, or historical, less historical, completely up to you. It's nice to have the option. I enjoyed both battles. I liked how the battles emphasized the weaknesses and the strengths of the two sides, numbers and mobility on the side of the Muslim player, strength and quality on the side of the Crusader player. Same thing that you find in Infidel, of course, because that is the historical reality. But I like that too. I like the fact that the theme feels familiar enough that it is almost like, oh, encountering an old friend, but at the same time, the two systems and the representations of these specific battles have enough differences that the games definitely feel different. They're not the photocopy of one another. They really have a good personality, an individual personality. So I enjoyed playing these battles. If you're a fan of the series and you're looking for a module to add to your collection, or if you just want to try the series for the first time, I believe that Swords and Crusade would be a good choice.